Hello everyone, this video is a feedback video on the question that you did on the liberalism topic. This is me going to be going over what a good one looks like. So I've picked one of the essays from one of the students from this year, and we're going to be looking at it together, and hopefully we can start to understand what an examiner would be looking for and how we need to structure our answers in future as well. So as a quick reminder of what the question was, what we always have with these ideologies questions is the same stem to the question. So always begin with this bit here: to what extent? And that means that basically we want to be using that phrase on a regular basis. We want to be using the words extent on a regular basis. So do they, in this case, agree to a limited extent, so not very much at all, or do they agree to a great extent? Okay, so hopefully we will see that word extent used on a regular basis. The next bit to think about in this question is that we're looking at these two groups or strands within liberalism, classical and modern. Okay, so hopefully we will be using those words on a regular basis as well. We will be looking at what they believe, where they agree, where they disagree as well. And it's really important, not many people fell into this trap, but it's really important that we don't get too hung up on who's a classical liberal, who's a modern liberal, but we are using key thinkers as our examples throughout our work. At least two should be mentioned. If you don't do that, unfortunately, the most that an examiner can give you is a level 2 of the 5 levels. So it's a maximum of 9 marks out of 24. Now in this answer we are focused on this bit here in this question, society. So it's very important that we are focused on society. Some students fall into the trap of talking about the economy, or maybe talking about the state, but it's only really relevant to do so if you're referring it back to society. Okay, so we're really thinking here about what is the most important bit of society. Is it the individual, or is it some group, some class, perhaps a particular gender or sex? We're also thinking about how is society structured. Is everybody equal? Or are some people more important than others? Do some people have some roles over others, rightly or wrongly? So that's what we want to be thinking about in this particular answer. So let's start to have a look at this answer together. This here is the introduction. And I should say at an early juncture that this is more than what would be expected. You might remember in my earlier video I said that in some ways an introduction is not always necessary for an ideology question, but if you are going to write one, you want it to be brief. You want to basically tell the examiner what you think and then move on. So this introduction is probably overlong. However, as you can see here, they say all liberals believe ultimately in the individual, which is more important than any social group. Liberals believe in rights and liberties, that individuals should have the freedom to make choices that impact their own lives, for example, freedom of religion and speech, as well as a belief in equality, especially equality of opportunity. Right, so they're outlining what they're going to be talking about later. That sort of makes it redundant in a way. It's in a way that, and what I mean by that is you've got to remember you've only got half an hour in the real thing. Right now you've got the time to play around with this. But in the real thing, you probably don't have the time to talk about things you're going to talk about later. This is a really important bit, what comes next. While these fundamental liberal beliefs are shared by classical and modern liberals, there is little extent of agreement on views of society. Okay, so that is the most important bit. This student would have done well just to basically end and only write that last sentence there. Okay, so this bit here at the end where they basically are outlining what their view is. Okay, so a bit messy with my highlighting, but you get the idea. Okay, so let's move on then to the first main body paragraph. We now know what the student thinks. We know that they think that there is little agreement between liberals on society. Right, so this is the first main body paragraph here, and we can see that in the very first sentence what they do quite nicely is they say both classical and modern liberals are in agreement to some extent over society, as they share the view that the individual is more important than any social group or collective body. So we've got a really clear argument at the beginning of our paragraph. They've used that word extent, and they've used that word society as well. So that's really clear that they're answering the question. They're building those analysis marks. They're building those evaluation marks as well, because they are coming to a judgment. Some extent. That phrase, some extent. Okay, so this student then goes on to talk about where they agree. Okay, so they've talked about already where they agree that the individual is more important than any social group. Now they're going to talk about classical liberals. They differ from modern liberals because they believe in an atomistic society, meaning a collection of self-interested individuals acting in their own interest. So what's really nice here is they have started to use this vocabulary that is special to this topic, and they've not only used it, they've used it accurately. They've said that it's a classical liberal idea, and they've also explained what it means. Now they go on and they say the classical liberalist, it says Robert Locke, it's actually John Locke, but they can be forgiven for making that mistake, argued how individuals should be able to use their own reason, so we've got another key term there, reason, to decide how they want to live their life, promoting egotistical individualism. Okay, so another key word coming through there. He argued people acting reasonably would be able to determine acting negatively or violently towards others is not in their own interest, so they would not do it out of their own reason and logic. The classical belief in an atomistic society loosely connecting individuals understands that society must loosely work together, forming a social contract, as it would be in our best interest to do so. Right, so as we can see in the green bit at the top there, they've talked about where they agree. They've also outlined what classical liberals think. They've given a key thinker, and now they're going to move on to what modern liberals think as well. Okay, so that's the next section here. On the other hand, so that's a useful phrase to use because it is comparing, it's contrasting, it's analysing. It's those AO2 analysis marks coming through. It says modern liberals, this other strand, build on the ideas of classical liberalism, promoting developmental individualism. So it's really important to remember that these are not two completely separate strands. Modern liberals merely build on the ideas of classical liberals, and it's that sort of nuanced idea here that really is quite impressive in this answer. So it continues on, modern liberals follow the belief not of an atomistic society, but the belief that realizing potential is not possible in isolation. Our rights, freedoms and growth is dependent on other people. So, you know, that sentence there could be tweaked. They don't completely reject the idea of an atomistic society, but I sort of get what they're getting at here, that they're trying to start to separate and show what the difference is between the strands. Okay, these are difficult ideas after all. So we've got our key thinker here. John Rawls promoted this idea that a just society is one with people working together for the common good, reducing inequality. So remember, liberals, no liberal believes that there should be a completely absolute equal society. They want to reduce inequality, or at least modern liberals want to anyway. They go on and talk about John Stuart Mill as well. Similarly promoted for one's best interest being in the common good of society through the importance of education to improve society, enabling people to develop. Okay, so the idea of the enabling of people is important here. Therefore, regarding the importance of the individual in society, classical and modern liberals agreed to a partial extent. There's that word there, the word extent coming through. As both recognise the importance of the individual, yet are not fully in agreement because classical liberals focus on the atomistic view of society, a collection of self-interested individuals, whereas modern liberals promote developmental individualism, individuals working towards a common good of society, only possible through working together. Now, before we move on, it's worth looking through this answer and seeing the sheer amount of times that this student uses the word society. Okay, so there's another one there. Again, it uses that word society again here, society there. And you're starting to get the idea, hopefully, that that word is used quite regularly. And so it's really clear that this student is answering the question. They're talking about society. Everything they talk about is related back to this idea of how liberals, what liberals think about society. So you can see in this one paragraph alone, they use the word society 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. 9 times. I might have missed some as well. Okay, and they use the word extent here at the beginning and at the end. Okay, so they haven't disagreed with themselves. They've said at some extent here, partial extent there. It's all making sense. Right, let's move on to this paragraph then, and we'll see more of what we're talking about. So, very first sentence then, we can see classical and modern liberals are in agreement to a substantial extent regarding rights and liberties in society. Okay, so we can see that from the off, they're using the words from the question, extent, society. And as you should, they go on to talk about what all liberals believe. Slightly different shade of green here, I apologise, but there we go. Okay, they believe that individuals should have the freedom to make the choices that impact their own lives. In contrast to modern liberals, classical liberals believe fundamentally in negative freedoms. Okay, so they're starting to introduce where the differences lie. Okay, so classical liberals believe in negative freedom. They believe that society, so there's that word from the question again, exists to limit the outside interference of others, as well as a belief in freedom from constraint. So that's what negative freedom believe. This was especially promoted by Mary Wollstonecraft, there's a key thinker there, who argued that women have the same capacity to reason, there's a key word there, as men. They should be constrained no more than men and should enjoy the same freedoms and opportunities as men. Modern liberals, however, so here we go, there's the other strand, move away from the belief in negative freedoms, instead focusing on positive freedoms. So hopefully they're going to tell us what that is. Modern liberals believe that true freedom to grow and achieve goals is not possible in isolation and requires others. For example, the state has a role through education to help us achieve our goals. They then bring in another key thinker, Bessie Friedan, built on the ideas of Wollstonecraft, So again, that nuanced idea that modern liberals build on the idea of classical liberals, arguing that women need more than laws to access the same freedoms and liberties as men. They need to be educated the same as men and given the same opportunities to develop as men are ultimately change how we view the role of women in society. There's a word from the question again. Both modern and classical liberals appear to agree to a significant extent. There's the student answering the question again. That society should work to protect the individual's ability to make their own choices. The minor difference being that modern liberals believe the state has a larger role to promote and enforce this, as true freedom requires others to recognise this freedom. So you can see here that they are comparing and contrasting the strands, but are always trying to emphasise where they agree as well, using those key thinkers as examples. Right, this last main body paragraph then. Modern liberals and classical liberals are in agreement over the importance of equality in society, because all liberals follow Locke's mechanisation theory, the belief that humans, being rational, can devise a society that reflects man's needs, ensuring equality. So they're using that word, they don't use the word extent this time, but they do use the word significant agreement, which is almost as good. And they begin by telling us how they agree. Okay, they're in agreement over this idea of equality, and they agree in John Locke's idea of the mechanistic theory. Okay, that humans can devise their own society that works for them. Okay, right, so now they start to compare and contrast. Modern liberals are different from classical liberals because classical liberals believe strongly in a meritocracy and formal equality of opportunity, with laws in place that tackle discrimination. This is what Mary Wollstonecraft, there's a key thinker here again, campaigned for, ensuring that success was based off of hard work and ability, not factors such as gender or race, which should not impact success. Right, so what could improve that sentence there is perhaps to tell us what a meritocratic society is, what formal equality of opportunity is. As a quick reminder, a meritocracy is where people get to where they are in society based off of work and ability, which they sort of do here later. And also talking about what formal equality of opportunity is, which they sort of get around to do, to be fair, where they talk about how there should be laws in place to prevent discrimination. Right, now they go on to talk about the other strand. Modern liberals built on the ideas of a meritocracy. So again, that nuanced idea that they are really sharing the same ideas, but they're interpreting them in slightly different ways, because they argued that formal equality of opportunity is simply not enough, and there must be fair or substantive equality of opportunity. So there we have our key thinker here who believes in this idea through his idea of the veil of ignorance. So many students use this idea, but not many explained it well. So proving that everyone wants a just society where all individuals, regardless of their starting point, can fulfill their potential. Modern liberals believe that formal equality is not enough. They believe that equality of opportunity must be enforced and practiced to achieve a just society. Some more key terms coming through here. Okay, so remember that modern liberals believe in this veil of ignorance idea, because if you didn't know what position you would be in society, if you didn't know where you would live, or what class you would be in, or what gender you would be in, what race you were, you would want everybody to be able to achieve. You would want, regardless of what gender or race, class, you would want everybody to have the same chances to be successful, because after all, you wouldn't know what part of society you would be in. So then they come to this conclusion here, they wrap it up quite nicely. However, modern liberals and classical liberals are in agreement to a moderate extent, as both believe strongly in a meritocracy, as some inequality must remain as an incentive to work hard, which benefits all in society. Okay, so they've topped and tailed this paragraph nicely. They've looked at how much they agree, and they've referred everything back to society. Right, to the conclusion then. The conclusion should be a substantial paragraph. It should be longer than your introduction. Not all answers had that. So let's have a little look at what we should be doing. So in conclusion, it says, it is evident that modern and classical liberals agree to a certain extent. Using that word from the question again. Over society. As through exploring the classical modern viewpoints on the importance of the individual, freedoms and equality in society, most classical liberal beliefs remain in modern liberal arguments but have been built on. Quite a long sentence that, but it does tell us what the student thinks, and it's got that nuanced idea again that modern liberals anyway, build on the idea of classical liberals. The importance of the individual in society is recognised by all liberals, because while classical liberals focus on the atomistic view of society to achieve everyone's best interest through self-interest actions, modern liberals also want to achieve everyone's best interests only by working together. So they emphasise the biggest area of agreement. Moreover, modern and classical liberals both appear to agree to a significant extent that society should work to protect the individual's ability to make its own choices, the minor difference being that modern liberals believe the state has a larger role to promote and enforce this, as true freedom requires others to recognise this freedom. And finally, modern and classical liberals are in agreement to as both believe strongly in a meritocracy, as some inequality must remain as an incentive to work hard, which benefits all in society, however with different expectations for the state's involvement in the recognition of enforcing equality. So the main thing to remember with a conclusion is you want to start off in the first sentence by telling the reader what you think, and this is what is done here in this first sentence. And then you want to go through and repeat your judgments that you made at the end of each of your main body paragraphs. So this is the judgment at the end of the first main body paragraph, this bit here. Whoa, what's going on there? And then this bit here is the judgment from the end of the second main body paragraph, emphasizing where they agree and disagree. And then this last paragraph here, this last sentence here that you can sort of see in yellow is showing the judgment, the evaluation at the end of the third main body paragraph. Again, emphasizing where they agree and disagree. Hopefully you found this video useful. Do make sure that you get in touch and let me know if you have any further questions, and hopefully you can then use this video to help you to redraft your answer and make it even better.